The 4 piglets cost $3 from the estate of William Nagata on a Friday morning in April of 1932, which was what they cost because nobody else at the Hendricks County dispersal could agree on what they were. Lily Varne paid the $3 before the discussion reached a conclusion. The dispersal had drawn the usual crowd, farmers in good coats, their wives in good hats, all of them moving through William Nagata's yard with the practiced efficiency of people who knew how to evaluate property at a glance. The Nagata farm was going to the bank on Monday. Everything on it was for sale. The crowd had been efficient about the furniture, the tools, the draft horse, the good oak table from the kitchen. Then someone had opened the pen at the back of the barn, and the efficiency had stopped entirely. The 4 piglets were white. That much was ordinary. But they were white with black, large, irregular patches of charcoal black splashed across their haunches and shoulders, and in one case directly across a face, so that the affected piglet appeared to be wearing a mask. They were round in a way that commercial piglets were not round, not the lean, fast-growing roundness of a Yorkshire or a Duroc, but a deep, settled, almost architectural roundness, as though they had been designed by someone whose primary concern was structural integrity. Their legs were short. Their snouts were upturned and blunt. Under each jaw hung 2 small, soft tassels of skin, barely an inch long, like the world's smallest beard on the world's most confident animal. They were, in aggregate, the strangest pigs anyone in Hendricks County, Indiana, had ever seen. 3 men looked at them. 2 of them laughed. One of them offered $1, which William Nagata's son politely declined on behalf of the estate as insufficient, and the man went back to look at the draft horse. Lily stood at the pin rail and looked at the piglets for a full 2 minutes without moving. They looked back at her with the round-eyed, wholly untroubled attention of animals that have never had reason to be anxious about anything. The masked one walked to the rail and pressed its upturned nose against the lowest board with the cheerful familiarity of an animal expecting something good to happen. Lily paid $3 and loaded all 4 in the slatted crate she had brought in the back of the flatbed, because she had known before she came that she would probably need it. Her name was Lily Varne. She was 26 years old and had been running the Varne homestead alone for 11 months, since her father's heart had gone out on him in May of 1931 and left her 80 acres of Indiana mixed grass country, 16 Duroc hogs, a kitchen garden, and a feed bill that was eating her margin the way the drought had eaten the topsoil, steadily and without apology. The Durocs ate corn. Corn cost money. Pork prices in 1932 had fallen to a level that made the math between corn in and pork out a slow disaster she was watching in the ledger every week. She had been corresponding since January, not about Durocs, about Kunekune. The breed had come to her attention through a single paragraph in a New Zealand agricultural journal a librarian in Indianapolis had tracked down for her. The paragraph described a pig of Maori origin, small, round, spotted, that possessed a quality no commercial American breed shared. It could sustain itself on grass alone, without supplemental grain, reaching useful market weight in 12 to 18 months. No corn, no oats, just grass, the thing Lily had 80 acres of. She had written to a livestock dealer in San Francisco, to a university in Wellington, and to the son of William Nagata, a New Zealand-born farmer in Hendricks County keeping a small Kunekune herd for 20 years. Young Thomas Nagata had written back in January. His father's health was failing, and the farm would likely be dispersed in spring. She had run the numbers in February and March. Each time the same conclusion. A grass-only herd of 20 Kunekune producing premium lard for Chicago specialty bakers at 40 cents per pound, a price Henri Leclerc, a French-trained pastry buyer, had confirmed in March after she wrote to him 3 times, would clear more in a year than her Duroc operation had cleared in 3. The piglets rode home in the flatbed crate with the equanimity of animals for whom transport was simply another unremarkable event in a life that expected to be unremarkable in all the best ways. She named them. The masked one, black patch across the left eye and cheek, she called Haine, the Maori word for girl. The largest, black-patched at both shoulders, was Tane. The other two she called Rua and Toru, the Maori words for 2 and 3, because she had used the best names already and felt honesty was the right approach. The first weeks were the work of learning. Kunekune required different management than any pig she had handled before. They did not root destructively the way commercial breeds did. Their upturned snouts were not built for deep ground disturbance, which was useful because it meant the pasture came back after them. They did not need to be confined to a small area and filled with grain on a schedule. They needed space, rotation between pasture sections, access to water, and that was nearly all. Hein established herself as the social center of the group within 48 hours, which meant wherever Hein was, the other 3 followed, which made management considerably simpler. By the end of the second week, Lily had understood that these 4 animals were going to be the most manageable livestock she had ever kept, and that this manageability was not a small thing. It was the county fair that brought her and Seth Raines into the same conversation. The Hendricks County Agricultural Fair ran the last full week of June. Lily had applied for a livestock display space, built a sign, white paint on a board, Kunekune pigs, New Zealand grass grazers, and brought Hein and Tane as display animals because they were the most visually striking and the most socially inclined. By 9 on the first morning, they had attracted more attention than anything else in the showing barn. Not all of it was respectful attention. Several men found them funny. Several women found them adorable in a way that was not entirely complimentary to the breed's dignity. A boy of about 8 spent 20 minutes trying to count the spots. But people stopped, and people looked, and people asked questions, which was exactly what she had come for. She answered every question with the same patience she brought to everything, and by mid-morning she had explained the grass-only grazing capacity 4 times. The fat composition of the lard twice, and the New Zealand origin of the breed to everyone who asked. Seth Raines came to the pen at 11 in the morning. He was 31 years old, dark-haired, full, dark brown, the kind that sat well under a hat and better without one, with dark eyes that moved quickly over whatever they were looking at, taking in everything before the looking settled. He had a jaw built for directness and the best face in the western half of Hendricks County by candid general agreement. Broad through the shoulders, moving with the economical ease of a man who had been doing physical work since he was old enough to be assigned it. He farmed 200 acres 4 miles north, corn and a small Duroc operation struggling against its own feed costs the way everyone's Duroc operation was struggling in 1932. He came to the pin rail and looked at Hein, who looked back at him with the pleasant, expectant expression she turned on everyone. Then at the sign, then at Lily. Grass grazers. He pointed at the sign. No grain at all? She watched his face. Not the face of a man who had come to be entertained by odd-looking pigs. The face of a man reading a problem he recognizes. None, she told him. Good pasture only. They convert grass to lard and meat more efficiently than any commercial breed, at 0 feed cost. He asked 6 questions in the next 10 minutes, all of them good, the kind from someone who had already thought about the problem from 3 angles. She answered each one. He listened with the quality she would come to know well, complete attention, nothing wasted. He looked at the ledger she had open on the display table, cost projections, which she had placed there deliberately because numbers persuaded farmers faster than descriptions. He read it. Then he looked up with the expression she had noticed from the beginning. Information received, something being done with it, arriving somewhere deliberate. He looked at her apron pocket, where the Chicago letter was visible at the edge. She took it out and set it beside the ledger. He read it. He put it down. He looked at her directly for the first time, the way a man looks when he has finished evaluating a situation and is ready to address it on its actual terms. Seth Raines. He put his hand out. North of you on the county road. Lily Varne. She shook it. I know the farm. He nodded. He looked at Hein one more time. Then he picked up his hat from the pin rail and put it back on. He came to find her at the fair again the following afternoon, and the one after that. By the third day, he was bringing coffee from the concession stand without being asked, which she noted without comment and accepted without performance, because it was a useful thing to do, and he was clearly a man who did useful things. Before we find out what Lily builds from $3 and 4 spotted pigs nobody in Indiana could name, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. This channel reaches people from all around the world, and we love knowing where these stories land. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now. New stories every week. The Lard operation began in earnest that autumn. Hein and Tane and Rua and Toru had spent the summer on the south pasture, rotating between 3 sections she had divided with portable wire, gaining weight on grass alone at the slower pace of the breed, not the 60-day sprint of a commercial hog, but a steady, unhurried accumulation that produced, by October, animals carrying fat at a density and quality she had not seen in a commercial pig. She had sent a small sample of rendered lard to Henri Leclerc in Chicago in August with a handwritten note. His reply came in September. This is exactly what I have been looking for. When can you supply at volume? She wrote back with a delivery date, a price, and a minimum quantity she could commit to by December. His reply confirmed all 3. She rendered the first batch in November. 2 wethers processed at the county butcher returned to her as clean fat. The lard came out pale gold and smooth, richer than anything from her Duroc operation, with a quality Henri Leclerc identified immediately in a return letter as the high oleic acid content expressing itself in the rendered product. She shipped 40 pounds to Chicago by rail in December, packed in the sealed tins she had ordered from a supplier in Indianapolis, labeled with the breed and the rendering date. The bank draft arrived before Christmas. $16. 40 pounds at 40 cents. $16 from 2 animals and 1 morning's rendering work. Her Duroc operation, after feed costs, had cleared $9 from twice as many animals across the entire previous quarter. She updated the ledger and looked at the 2 numbers side by side for a long time. Then she wrote to Thomas Nagata, who had kept 4 more Kunekune from his father's dispersal and had been trying to find a home for them since April. She arranged to purchase all 4. She wrote to Henri Leclerc with a revised production schedule for the coming year. She wrote to the county extension office asking about the Halverson property to the east, 40 acres of good pasture that had been sitting empty since the Halverson family left for relatives in Ohio, and that the county land office had been trying to place since August. Seth Raines had been coming to the farm on Wednesday evenings since September. Not on any pretext, he had appeared the first Wednesday with a replacement gate hinge she had mentioned at the fair, fixed it, accepted coffee, and asked about the autumn grazing rotation. He came the following Wednesday with nothing to fix, and they had talked for 2 hours about the lard market and his Duroc operation, and whether the numbers could be salvaged at current corn prices. He had gone home looking like a man with something to think about. He came back every Wednesday after that through October and November, reliably, the way the decent things in that year were not reliably showing up. She did not examine this too carefully. She had enough to examine. The county had opinions. Martha Stokes at the dry goods said spotted pigs indicated poor breeding. Roy Cassidy at the feed store told her 3 times that a pig that didn't eat corn wasn't a real pig. The county extension agent, Douglas Pell, came out in October and said, with the precision of a man updating his own understanding, that the feed cost elimination alone justified the breed switch in the current market. He mentioned her operation in the December newsletter without naming her. Seth said nothing about the county's opinions. He came on Wednesdays and asked good questions and fixed 2 more things that needed fixing without being asked, and ate whatever she put on the table and listened to everything she said with the quality she had identified at the fair. He was, she had come to understand, the most useful person she knew, in the specific way that useful means when it is not a compliment you give to objects. The spring of 1933 brought the second generation. Hein and Rua, bred to the boar she had acquired from Thomas Nagata's remaining animals in November, a cream and black Kunekune she called Rangi, delivered in March. Hein farrowed 7 in a night so cold Lily slept in the barn. All 7 lived. Rua delivered 6 4 days later, 5 carrying the cream and black spotting of the line. She retained the 7 females and marked the 6 males for the production cycle that would deliver to Leclerc by the following autumn. 13 animals now, growing toward 20. The ledger projected that 20 grass-fed Kunekune on rotated pasture, producing twice-yearly lard batches at Leclerc's confirmed price, would clear $230 in a year. Against the $60 she had cleared on the Duroc operation in 1931, before the feed costs had consumed the margin entirely. She needed more pasture. The Halverson 40 acres to the east had been sitting empty since the Halverson family left for Ohio, and in March, she drove to the county land office in Danville and left with a purchase agreement, $220 in 2 installments. The first $90 she had in the bank from the lard deliveries. The second was due in November, which the autumn production cycle would cover. She drove home with the agreement on the passenger seat, updated the ledger in a second color of ink, and cooked supper. We're halfway through this story, and we want to know, have you ever seen a Kunekune pig up close? That spotted coat, that upturned nose, there's nothing quite like it. Tell us in the comments. We read every one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is your reminder. New stories every week. Seth arrived the following Wednesday with no hardware to fix and no visible pretext, the way he had been arriving for 6 months, and sat down at the kitchen table and looked at the purchase agreement she had left on the table because she had decided, sometime between the land office and the farm, that the table was where she wanted him to see it. He picked it up. He read it. He set it down. The Halverson 40. He looked at her with the expression she had identified at the fair, information received, something being done with it, arriving somewhere deliberate. The pasture rotation can carry 25 animals once I have it fenced, she told him. Leclerc has already confirmed he can take the increased volume. The November installment comes from the autumn lard batch. She turned the ledger toward him. The margin is here. He read the ledger. He turned the page. He read the second page. He was quiet for longer than usual, which was unusual, because Seth Raines processed quickly. She waited, because she had learned that his long silences meant something different from his short ones. Not uncertainty, but the careful approach to a thing he intended to say exactly right. He looked up. Lily. She waited. He put the ledger down. He looked at her the way he had been looking at her since the fair, not at the pigs, not at the numbers, at her. And she had been receiving this look for 9 months with the patient attention she brought to everything that mattered. I have been thinking since June, he told her, about what I saw at that pin rail, not the pigs. He paused. The person explaining them. She looked at him, at his hands on the table, large, work-worn, entirely still. I thought at the time I was thinking about the operation. He met her eyes. I have come to understand I was thinking about considerably more than the operation. He paused. I would like to keep thinking about it, if you'll let me. All of it. She looked at him for a long moment. She had arrived at this position months ago, in a gradual accumulation of Wednesday evenings and coffee and a man who had never once told her what to do with her farm. You've been thinking about it every Wednesday since September, she pointed out. The corner of his mouth moved. I know. He looked at her. I was hoping you'd noticed.
"I noticed in October," she told him. "I was waiting to see if you'd arrive somewhere." He laughed, the full kind, unguarded, the one she had not heard before and liked immediately. Then he reached across the table and covered her hand with his, which was not what she had expected and was exactly right.
He did not propose at the kitchen table. He proposed at the county fair the following June. The same fair, the same showing barn, the pen where Hein had pressed her nose to the rail the year before, with Hein watching from inside the display pen with the cheerful attention she brought to all human activity. Exactly the right setting. She said yes with the same directness she brought to every true thing. If you've made it to the end of this story, thank you. Leave a comment below. What's the best decision you've ever seen someone make that nobody else understood at the time? Your stories are what makes this community what it is. Subscribe if you haven't already. We'll have a new story for you next week. They were married in August of 1933 in the Hendricks County church, which was attended by everyone who had formed an opinion about Lily Varne's spotted pigs, which was everyone. She wore her mother's dress, ivory lawn cotton, and Seth stood at the altar and watched her walk toward him with the expression of a man who has been watching something come toward him for 14 months and finds the arrival entirely equal to the anticipation. They said their vows in front of Reverend Mills, who kept it short because both of them had already said the essential thing at the kitchen table in March, and the ceremony was, in some sense, the formal record of it. The Varne Rains operation, the original 80 acres, the Halverson 40, Seth's 200 to the north converted from Duroc to grass rotation by 1934, grew through the following years with the logic of a thing planned correctly from the beginning. Seth had converted not because Lily suggested it, but because he had run the numbers himself in October of 1932 and arrived at the same conclusion she had reached in February. Their daughter May arrived in the spring of 1934, fair-haired like her mother and direct like both of them. Their son Jack followed in 1936, quieter, more deliberate, the kind of child who watched something a long time before deciding what to do with it. Entirely his father. The herd numbered 31 animals by the spring of 1936. The Leclerc contract had renewed twice at increasing prices as alternative supply failed to materialize. A second Chicago buyer, a hotel kitchen procurement officer named George Fitch, had signed a separate agreement for the premium pork cuts after Leclerc mentioned the operation to him in 1935. The combined income from lard and pork for 1935 was $480, against the $60 the Duroc operation had cleared in its last year. On a June morning in 1937, 5 years to the month from the county fair where it had started, Lily was in the south pasture doing the quarterly herd assessment when May found her. May was 3 years old and had been coming to the pasture since she could walk, because Lily had been bringing her since she was 6 weeks old, and the herd had accepted her with the calm, interested friendliness they extended to everything. May went directly to Hein, who was 5 years old now and had not changed in any essential respect, still round, still spotted, still pressing her nose to any available surface with cheerful expectation, and put both hands on Hein's broad back and leaned into the solid warmth of the animal with the satisfaction of a child who knows exactly where she belongs. Seth came through the pasture gate with Jack on his shoulders, Jack leaning forward with both fists in Seth's hair, looking at the herd with the quiet, focused attention that was entirely his own. Seth set Jack down. Jack walked directly to Tane, the largest of the original four, 6 years old now and magnificently round. The black shoulder patches faded to a soft charcoal, and sat down beside him in the grass with the deliberate air of a child settling in for a long and important conversation. Seth came to where Lily was standing with the ledger. He looked at the herd, 31 spotted animals on the good Indiana grass, the Halverson pasture visible beyond the fence, the morning light coming warm across everything. He looked at her. She looked at him. They had been looking at each other across this pasture and across kitchen tables and across county fair pin rails for 5 years, and it had not become ordinary. His eyes asked the question.
She knew what it was.
She looked at her ledger, at the herd, at May leaning against Heine with total confidence, at Jack explaining something to Tane with great seriousness, at the Halverson pasture running to the east, all of it theirs, all of it earned. Like what I calculated, she told him, and then some. He put his arm around her. She leaned into it and kept her eyes on the ledger, and he looked at the far pasture, and the herd moved through the Indiana morning with the unhurried contentment of animals who have always known that this is what the world is for. And the spotted coats caught the June light, cream and charcoal and all that extraordinary roundness, and it was, by every measure that actually counted, considerably more than enough.